Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 107, I believe this is, where I am coming to you from Omaha, Nebraska. I rarely do, guests on the podcast because this is supposed to be a storyteller's podcast from my perspective, my opinions on things in relation to events I've lived in the past. And usually I share a story or two about experiences that I've had. But this one is a little bit unique. Obviously, right now, everybody in America is dealing with, a really weird situation outside of the COVID, virus madness. We're seeing these George Floyd protests that started out as a protest towards in favor of George Floyd and against institutional racism. And it does appear as though it's kind of become something different, where I don't know that a lot of people could actually even put their finger on what it is about from day to day. What's really interesting is I'm at an event in Omaha. It's a fanfare event where we do different ghost hunting events and just, meet up with people who support me and my films. And one of my attendees, one of my guests, is a gentleman named Kevin Vodicka. And it was interesting. I've known Kevin online, at least I've spoken to him online several times, and I did not know initially that he was a police officer. And he emailed me actually before this event and said, "So how do you feel about police officers?" And he told me he was a police officer in Omaha. And I said, "Well, my uncle is actually the Sarpy County judge down here." So he actually knew who my uncle was. So I have a deep-rooted history here with law enforcement. And we had a chance at the Malvern Manor to kind of discuss everything that has been going on right now. And there was a lot of insight that he gave me. And I woke up this morning and it just dawned on me that, I watched the news again this morning to catch up, and I've just yet to hear any police officers be on all these national broadcasts. And it seems to me that's the one voice that people should be talking to, but it's the one voice that seems to be suppressed and silenced through all this. So I wanted to, see if Kevin wanted to talk about kind of what's going on, and this is not a pro or against a police officer interview. It's just really kind of the opportunity to hear what Kevin thinks about what's going on. And let me start by saying this too. In no way does Kevin represent every police officer or every district. Obviously, he can only speak about what his experiences are, and he could speak for himself. So. Having said that, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what I've heard from him and a lot of unique answers. And I was surprised by, how much sense he made of a lot of things when we were talking. So I just want to jump into it right now and kick it over to him and have him get a little history about yourself. So he is here with me. Kevin, how long have you been a police officer here in Omaha?
In Omaha, I've been a police officer for just over 18 years.
What made you, let's start with this. What made you want to be a cop? And I ask you this because the two dudes I know that I went to school with that are cops now, I'm going to be honest, they were like the two biggest dudes that everybody fucked with and bullied on, and now they're cops. And they're like, none of us were surprised. We were like, okay, these are the dudes that want to fight back,
Well, it wasn't that.
Okay.
I had some positive interactions with police officers when I was younger.
That's cool.
After high school, I went to the University of Nebraska in Omaha here, just started studying in criminal justice, and it just kind of steered me to that direction of my career.
Now, when you first thought of going into law enforcement, I mean, did you obviously think about the fact that, your life on a daily basis could be on the line?
Yeah, for sure.
And that was something that, like most people, that would be a deterrent. They wouldn't want to deal with that. Why wasn't that a deterrent for you? Was that something that was exciting to you or no?
No, but it's one of the make or break things. I mean, you figure out pretty quickly who's going to stick around and be a good cop, or right, who's going to beat their feet.
Now, what is the process to become a police officer? If I wanted to become a cop, like what do I do?
Basically, at least with the city of Omaha, they have a website now, joinopd.com. Go there, fill out a form. They'll get back in contact with you. You'll go to like a general written test, then you'll do like a physical test, and then if you move on from those two things, you go to like a structured interview type of deal. Well, they'll like drug test you and kind of they move it to like the background investigator, so they'll go through all your backgrounds, and then it's just kind of like the military where there's like just like I call it the hurry up and wait type deal where you got a month of busyness and then you're doing nothing for a month and another month and then another month, so it's just kind of hurry up and wait type deal.
But they do background checks, and they try to find out. Like, you can't be or can you be a felon and be a cop?
Nope.
You cannot be a felon.
Nope.
Okay, so you have to have in your background. You couldn't have crossed that line at any point. Okay. Is there? You talked about you take the writing test, and then there's like a physical test. Like, is there like a basic training type of thing that you go through, or no?
21 weeks of academy, and our academy here is in Omaha. Each department is different. Like all the other smaller towns in Nebraska, they go to Grand Island, where they have a large academy in Grand Island.
Okay.
Lincoln Police Department has their own academy. I think Bellevue has their own academy.
And it's 21 weeks.
21 weeks.
Are you paid throughout that?
Yeah.
So you're paid as a potential.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I went there, a lot of people hated it, but I was just a college kid, so I'm like, hey, getting paid to go to college is not a big deal to me. So.
Right, exactly, and it's not paid a lot, right?
No,
I mean, it's just enough to probably cover your rent type of thing.
No, I can't remember what it is now. I mean, it's a lot more than what it was when I started in 2002, but
okay. Well, let's get into this a little bit. The more pressing issues. Now, you've seen the George Floyd footage. I would assume, just from our conversation hanging out, it's pretty easy to point at that and say that's wrong. Correct?
Yeah, in every which way. There's not one way around. You could say that.
Right.
You can't pull anything.
There's no amount of footage that we haven't seen that could change that.
Yeah, there's nothing you could change anything about that. That was absolutely horrible and should never have happened.
Right. And I think most people could obviously point to that and say that that's pretty easy. But I guess. My issue, or I should say my issue, because it's not an issue, but when I think of that scenario, to me, this sounds weird when I say this, that's almost not the issue, because I think everybody can say that's wrong, right? Everybody can point and say that's wrong.
For sure.
That's pretty easy. What gets harder to me is the things like, I liken a bad police experience to like a bad drinking experience. When I was in college, I used to love whiskey. And I drank Southern Comfort forever until I about killed myself one night on it and was hugging the toilet for 20 hours off puking up Southern Comfort. And to this day, I won't have another Southern Comfort because I had the kind of same thing where you have like 8, 9, 10 interactions with police officers, and then you have that one that's terrible, and forever the one that's terrible is the one that's in your head. And now you don't trust anybody. You just don't trust anybody. Do you feel... when you, on the average stop or whatever, do you come across people that are just scared of you, period, before they even get a chance to speak to you? Because I think one of the major issues is that people in general, by and large, a lot of people just don't trust that when they get pulled over by a cop, that the cop is going to do something good. They trust it's going to be a bad scenario.
Sometimes, but it's all also in the demeanor of the police officer too. Right. So, I mean, It's a whole business of reading each other. I mean, we could read each other. I mean, if you get out and you're Mr. Billy Badass right away, I mean, you're going to scare the person. I mean, there's times where you have to be, if it's an armed party call or or if it's stolen vehicle and stuff. You got to do the job. You got to do your business, right away. But
what's a scenario where you feel like you need to be like badass cop? Like if you pull a guy over, what would make you feel like you need to be firm with them and like? Like, is there any telltale sign? Is it a color thing?
No.
When you pull over a black person,
nope.
is it like it's not?
Nope. And that just comes back from me growing up where I did when I did with my mom. Color was never a thing with me. I don't see color. It's just who I am.
Now, in the police department that you work in, have you seen what you would view as systematic racism?
In Omaha? No.
Yeah.
I have not.
You haven't?
Nope.
At all?
Nope.
Never? What do you think the biggest issue with, not even necessarily the Omaha Police Department, but with policing today, what do you think is the biggest problem that could be fixed?
And I told you before, the biggest thing is because we see it more often is the mental health issue. A lot of people, especially with this COVID stuff, a lot of people are hurting, on the inside and mentally.
Right.
Just giving officers more training with the mental health side, not turning them into social workers, but just giving them that extra training. Say, hey, a lot of people are hurting. This is how you can, instead of going it one way, this is just another way another way around to go at it.
How much training do you guys get in aggressively handling a situation versus de-escalation?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I mean, you'd have to talk to someone from training.
Right.
But I know. I mean, it's probably half and half.
Okay. Because I also feel like de-escalation should be like the goal. And,
It is.
And you believe that, and you're trained that it is?
Well, at least for me, it is.
Right.
And I told you before, I could talk my way out of a fight, or barring an armed disturbance or a gun or something. I usually could talk my way out of a fight 90% out of the time.
Right.
I mean, it's just all about your communication skills.
Right. I think for a lot of people too that watched the George Floyd footage, one of the things that was the most disturbing about it, like I said, the guy that has his knee on his neck, that's easy to point at and say that's wrong. But the police officers that are watching it go on without doing anything about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you needed to speak up about another officer? And if you did speak up, is there anything that you will face from other police officers if you out someone, or if you know what I'm asking you?
Yeah, maybe back in the day, but now, no.
It's different now?
It's presently, no. I mean, you wouldn't. People understand it's your job. We've got a family, got kids. It's
right.
You gotta cover your own back too.
And I'm not asking you to name names or anything. But have you come across a scenario where you've been like, "Yo, that's too much"?
For sure.
And have you ever stepped up to an officer and said that?
For sure.
Really, you have. Mm-hmm. How often do you think that happens? More often than not, do police correct the officer, or is it like the good old boy system where they just kind of look the other way?
As I said, presently it's probably the other way around. The good old boy system's done. I mean, people can say it's around maybe in some little small departments, but the good old boy system's gone.
How much of an effect did the body cameras have to do with that?
Some officers, it has a lot to do. I mean,
I would think, yeah.
Some officers, the body cams really have effect on officers. Right. Myself personally, I just do the same thing. I'm always the same cop. I don't even really feel like I have it on me most of the time, just because I don't change it the way I police when I have it on. It's just a second set of eyes. And with our department, 80 to 90% of the time, it's going to save your ass, rather than it's going to burn you.
Right.
So and they know, our department knows who are the bad cops anyways, and they're gone. They're on their way out. They're gone anyways, so they don't mess around anymore.
Really? Mm-hmm. Was there any kind of event, because we say, now it's that way, was there any kind of event that brought on this change that you're talking about here? Was, like when you say, when I came in, it was more like that. Now the good old boy system's kind of gone. Well, what ushered out the good old boy system? Was it wearing the cameras? Or was it just the social media, people being able to report things?
City of Omaha, Omaha Police Department's really progressive. This is a lot of departments are starting this now as like a knee jerk. Yeah. We've been doing this for years. At least 10 years. We've been on the fast track to body cams, changing the way we do things, more training, more verbal de-escalation, more different de-escalation techniques. Racial bias training that we're going through again, which is completely fine. And I'm always for training. More training, the better.
Right.
You can't do anything bad with training. Training is going to help everybody.
Right.
With Omaha Police Department, as I said, Nebraska and Omaha, we have a real special relationship with citizens of the city of Omaha. The OPD does.
Yeah.
Our chief right now is a huge believer in community policing. I was in mounted patrol for almost 10 years, and that's one of our biggest community policing tools is the horses. We take those horses down to the urban areas of Omaha. You have a lot of kids and a lot of families that don't like police officers, but they're more apt to come up to you on the top of a horse and say, "Hey, can we pet your horse?" Sure. Yeah. They'll start petting your horse, give them some stickers, love up in your horse, and hey, he made a friend. That's a really good community relation tool. So
Right. Now, am I wrong, or wasn't there just a really controversial case here in Omaha where a person got shot and killed?
yeah, that was during the protests. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what was the specifics surrounding that case in general? Like, what's known publicly?
Um, there's a store owner that was apparently protecting his store because something was broken. I think windows were broken or something like that. I don't know the exact specifics because I wasn't in this area at that time.
Right.
Supposedly, the gentleman that ended up getting shot, he was our county attorney said it was self-defense according to the video.
Okay.
But he did the right thing. He pushed it into a grand jury, which he should have, and they appointed a special prosecutor,
Okay.
and they're going to look at all the evidence, all the videos, all the.
And it was a
all the
store
witnesses.
owner that killed somebody else.
Yes.
And was it a white store owner that killed
Yes.
a black? Yeah. Was it a protester?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going through a special prosecutor.
Yep, and it's a grand jury. So I mean,
right.
Our county attorney did the right thing, and he pushed it towards a grand jury. He didn't have to do that, but he did it
Right.
just to get an extra set of eyes
Right.
on it to make sure everything was right.
It's smart. He should. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now's the time where you definitely want to, cross your T's.
Yep.
And okay, what do you think? You were telling me a story how there was riots here that was it you or you said or somebody you said that people were throwing things at you when you were down here and like urine bottles and shit like that and stuff.
Bottles of urine, rocks,
and that was when
frozen water bottles. Yeah, I hit in the head with a softball sized thing of concrete from the street.
And you were trying to just clear the area?
Yep.
That's what you were doing.
Yeah, you can peacefully protest all day. I don't care. I mean, that's our part of our God-given right, from the Constitution. Peacefully protest.
Right.
But yeah.
And why did you guys have to clear the area? Because looting started and rioting and that type of stuff? Is that what
they were overtaking one of our main streets, and so we just tried to clear them out, and they cleared out, and then they just started hurling stuff at us.
Right.
So, and damaging property.
Wow.
And then we wanted to prevent looting like some of the other bigger cities had. We really didn't have. We had some looting go downtown, but we didn't really have a looting problem here.
No, not a lot. In what scenario should you be drawing your weapon?
If someone's in danger of losing their life, or if you're in danger of your life,
and you decide that, obviously, right? If you're the cop. Don't you think that is a natural issue that's going to be hard to get past no matter... And I'm bringing this up because if the measure of the law is, I was scared... Fear.
You can't jump in my brain and say, hey...
Right.
It's a very tough issue.
That seems to be something that... because it's easy to watch a video and look at a video and... make an assessment as to what happened. But obviously when you're in the middle of something, it's always different. And I would never be a police officer just because I know my level of fear. And I'd be like, I'm fucking shooting everything. Like, I'm just like, I'm not giving up my life. I would be the terrible candidate, so I wouldn't do it, And I've appreciated those who have done it. But I got to admit, man, I've always had a fear of police officers since, I've talked about this before on here, this one police officer pulled me over, and he didn't do anything physically, but he verbally just badgered the shit out of me and just talked down to me like for the longest period of time about something as stupid as texting. And I kept trying. I felt like I was the one trying to de-escalate it, to move it on. I had shit I had to do. And he just had this like total attitude, and his attitude was kind of like, how can I explain it? It was almost like he was disgusted that he had to take his time to deal with me. But it's just like, but you chose to pull me over. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He just had that attitude. And I honestly felt like at that time, like, this dude's having a bad day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not me. Something in his life has made him do this. And that seems to me to be another very difficult situation, is that you guys, our cops are human, and they're going to have bad days.
That we do.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, the issue is the law has to be universal. Mm-hmm. It has to be universal. And one of my biggest issues with all this stuff is, like I said, it's easy to look at George Floyd and say that's wrong. Anyway, I would think most reasonable people could look at that and go, that's ridiculous. My major issue with the police is that it seems as though the police never pay for the crime. They go to court afterwards, and it's either, oh, he's suspended and moved, and he got, or suspended, but oh, here's pay for the time off. Or when police are killing people, because the measure is fear, it seems like they never, ever, ever get the full measure of the law that I would or anybody else would. Do you think that's been an issue throughout really the country in general, is that police seemingly have a second standard of laws that they have to abide by versus us, the public?
Yes and no. I think that's slowly changing with everything happening currently.
Do you think it would change if suddenly a couple of police officers were like, you got 20 years for assault, you know what I mean? Or you're doing life, you know what I mean?
You're going to see that here pretty soon.
Well, I think that would be one of the biggest deterrents for if a police officer knew that you're not going to get the kind hand of the law if you do this. Because I can tell you this right now, man, starting with it, if I was out on the street right now and there was 9 minutes of footage of me driving my knee into a dude's throat until he was dead, I wouldn't have had the benefit to go home for a week and let people decide if I need to come in. I'd be arrested on the spot. I would be charged on the spot. And I think that's the anger that people are so upset about, because we keep seeing these videos. And I also think the average person could say that, look, in a split-second moment, it's hard. And you can give some understanding to the fact that when your life is on, like I recently saw this one footage of this police officer that is walking up and he just pulls out his camera, and I'm talking the hail of gunfire that comes out of this car before this cop could even ask what was going on. I mean, it was just a hail of gunfire that took this cop out. And I was just like, oh my God. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys see videos like this. You guys watch these things. You are trained to do things. So I completely get that it's an absolute difficult job to do. But it's also, when I hear people say they signed up for it, I think there's a yes and a no for that. But I think you signed up for it should just include some kind of measure where police understand that they're going to be held to the same measure of the law. Where it seems like they're not. It really seems like they're not. Why did those police officers not stop him? You tell me. Why didn't they? Why didn't they stop him? Like, what do you think? George Floyd, when the guy's got his knee on his neck, even after he's out and done, why did those police officers not feel as though they should have been like, hey, bro?
Yeah, they should have.
They should have, right? And they didn't, because I would assume because that is the nature of that precinct and that thing. Like, there's the good old boy system. They're not going to tell another dude not to do that, Now, why do you think that is? Like, is it just in cities like that? And because you keep mentioning Omaha, do you think Omaha has less of a racial component to the city versus like a Chicago or a Minneapolis? Do you think Omaha has less of a racial component or not?
I don't know the specifics, like the percentage wise,
right?
But I mean, I think some of those other bigger cities. I mean, the
deal with it a little more.
The minorities are, the percentage wise is up higher than it is in Omaha, but
right. Well, what would you suggest? You tell me. Someone tomorrow says, Kevin, we got to fix this problem. How do we fix it? Because I first off, what did you hear when you first heard defund the police? What did you think?
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
I agree. And I'm one of those guys that says, police system's fucked up. We got to change this. As I said to you yesterday, I said, listen, if I built a house and then I walked in and like the hallway was unlevel, I wouldn't go, we got a problem here. Let's burn this fucker down and start over. Fix the hallway. You know what I mean? Or I'd fix whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think the question that everybody wants to know is, what can we do, and what can we do for real? Like, don't bullshit. No bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like, what can we really do to fix this? Where police officers, A, are more compassionate, B, are able to, as a whole, their goal should, in any situation, I would believe their goal should be, how do I get everybody home safe without making any lives harder or sending people to jail or stacking tickets on people? Just A lot of times it just takes someone just to help make sense of a situation, to have things go. How do we get to there, and how do we, properly, when there's that gray area of fear, how do we properly, make that situation better where police are pulling their guns less? Like, if someone says, Kevin, it's your job to fix this, what would you do? How would you approach this?
Omaha's slowly moving towards that. I mean, we're adopting a mental health and wellness unit. We're trying to get that started. Basically, we have co-responders. I think we have probably 3.
What's a co-responder?
They're a licensed health clinician, so they're like a licensed therapist.
Gotcha.
For the state of Nebraska.
Gotcha.
We've got one that works for the the Omaha Police Department. She's like a coordinator, and we've got like 3 or 4 that are like sprinkled out through the Omaha in each precinct, because we have 5 precincts.
Right.
So we have those. We have about 2 to 3 CIT classes a year, which are crisis intervention team classes.
Right.
Which it's 40 hours of pretty hardcore training on how to deal with mental illness, mentally ill people.
Mm-hmm.
They work on like active listening is really big with mentally ill people. I mean, a lot of the time they just want someone to talk to, want someone to listen to.
Right.
And I've told you this before. I mean, if you get to the point where you can get that safety, you can see that it's not a safety issue. They don't have a gun. They're not angry. I mean, they could be angry, but they're not going to beat you up. They're not, it's
Right.
not a safety issue.
Right.
I'll sit down and talk to them for as long as they need. Take them to a hospital, get them checked out. You have them talk to a therapist.
Right.
And that'll solve it from there for the most time.
Right.
This new unit that we're trying to work on, it's just going to take time with COVID and all this different stuff going on. We're going to, like our corresponders now, they'll go up and follow up with the people after they get discharged from the hospital, make sure everything's going on okay, make sure everything's good to go.
Right.
But as I said, 60-70% of our calls we get in Omaha, Nebraska are mental health related calls.
Mental health related.
Yeah.
So you think there needs to be better training on how to deal with the mentally ill?
And that's, I mean, it's a big thing. And if you look at San Antonio, and I told you about the Ernie and Joe crisis cops, they have 20 people on their mental health unit, 2 sergeants, and the rest are cops. And it's a full-time unit. They'll ride around, hop calls with regular cops.
But see, that actually makes a ton of sense to me, because most people that are committing violent crimes, and a lot of times they have mental health issues.
Yep.
If you're going to the point of shooting someone, raping someone, killing someone. So that makes a ton of sense, that there should be more training of working with the mentally ill.
Yep. Get them on the right medication. And I mean,
yeah.
And I've taken a lot of classes so I know a lot of the different medications that people take. So I can tell you, if they tell me, oh, I'm on Thorazine or I'm on Seroquel or whatnot, I can kind of tell you what they've been diagnosed with and kind of take it from there.
Are there any medications that you can't be a police officer if you're on it?
Like narcotics and stuff. I mean, you can't be a cop if you're
currently using narcotics.
Yeah.
Even like pain meds for surgery or something.
If you had surgery or something, you can't. Yeah,
can't do it. Okay. How do we get, like, I've gotten to know you, over time, and you're a very laid back person. Like, you seem like the right kind of personality for the job, because I don't think we need these alpha male swinging dick, type of cop. Rarely does that ever make a situation better.
And right now we pretty much take what we can get.
Now explain that to everybody, because that was going to be my question. How do I find more of you? How do I eliminate the dude that's just looking to just throw his weight around and be Captain Badass? Like, how do we eliminate those and find more you? And what is the difficulty in that right now?
Difficulty, we have a backgrounds unit, so they'll go in and weed out the ones that generally they don't think will work. We have polygraphs, and so we'll take polygraphs and do all that different stuff. When I applied, I think it was roughly 2,500 to 3,000 people applied when I applied. Now they're choosing from pools from about 300, 400, 500 people. So
now, why is it so much lower now?
No one wants to be a cop.
No one wants to be a cop.
I mean,
wow.
Would you want to be a cop if you saw the news?
No.
They did,
No.
and they've done if you I can't remember where I saw it, but they did a poll somewhere where they pulled all these cops, and I can't remember, it was police one on .com or something like that. 7% of all the cops they polled would recommend being a police officer.
Only
Out of all
7%
7%
would recommend being a police officer.
currently.
Wow. What do you think the biggest deterrent is? Just the social aspect of it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So because the social aspect of it is negative, there's less people that want to be it, which makes it harder to find better candidates. And in a lot of cases, you just have to have police officers, so they got to pull from what they choose.
But I mean, we get lucky though. I mean, we do get lucky out of our small pool that we do get. We do get lucky and get some good police officers.
Right.
And as I said, with all the bad stuff that happens, there are really good stuff that happens, and you know, there are really good interactions with young kids and even career criminals. I've had great interaction with career criminals. You know, that they'll give me a big old hug and say, "Thank you, officer. You know, I really appreciate you treating me like a person."
Right.
You know, most people will just look the other way because I've got tattoos all over my face. I'm like,
Right.
I don't care what you look like. You know, treat me the way my mom always instilled in me. Treat someone like you want to be treated. So
Yeah.
and generally, most of the time, you could do that on the job.
Well, there's an old saying that everything you learned in life that was important, you learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Pretty true.
Yeah.
You know, be good to others, be kind, don't steal, don't, you know what I mean? Like all of those things. Well, last question here. We've talked about this coming up. November's coming up. And it's a time period that everyone, I think, is kind of looking at in a nervous way right now with the elections coming up. And you don't know, for the first time in our lifetimes, things are truly unstable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's uncomfortable, I think, for everybody. As a police officer, with November coming up, are you so married to the badge that, like, no matter what happens socially, you will still take to the streets and be like, I'm going to do my job, I'm going to do this? Or will it get to a place where police are like, listen, man, unless you're short of killing somebody, I'm not doing anything? Because that's always my fear. When I heard this defund the police thing, I was thinking that cops are feel like, hey, you don't appreciate me? Okay, when the call comes, I'm busy.
Yeah, that's not me.
You know what I mean?
And I've said this before. I mean, you can spit in my face, call me whatever name you want to call me. You call 911 and you need help, I'm still going to be there, still going to show up. You get shot at, I'm going to jump in front, shoot at the person that's shooting at you. I'll be there no matter what. So even if you hate me or you love me, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, that's just how I've always been. And I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
Someone's always going to need police, whether you're going to defund us or you're going to fund us. There's always that. There always has to be law and order. You know.
I agree.
If it's not us, it's going to be a militia or it's going to be someone else that's going to step up and run it a lot worse than what we're running it.
Right.
You know, you're always going to need police.
Right.
You know?
That's always been my fear with all this stuff. When I first heard the defund the police thing, my fear is that we're headed towards a really dangerous time in our country's existence, and the idea and thought that there would be no force existing to help keep order, I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about right now. Like, we have to have police that are there. It's such a tricky situation, man, because, you know, and it's not just a few bad apples. It's a lot of bad apples, man. There's been a lot of shitty cops that have done horrible. There's whole movies like the 5-6 Priests. There's whole documentaries about it, about the most crooked, vile motherfuckers ever doing the worst of shit.
Bad people in every
right. But there's also amazing guys that.
I mean, I think they said we have like 900,000 cops in the country.
900,000. Wow.
1%.
Yeah.
1% of them are bad.
Right.
That's not a whole lot out of the 900,000 people. But
it's not. But the only unfortunate part of it, that 1%, they could wield their law a long way. Their version of the law. You know what I mean? They could wield it a long way.
And that all goes back to human beings being human beings.
True. I get that. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I think the two issues, in my opinion, the two main issues are they've got to find a way to traverse that discretion of fear, because you can't get inside a guy's head. You're right. and they've got to find a way to apply the law to people who do wrong that are police officers, because I think that would be the biggest deterrent. And hopefully, from what you're telling me, if they could turn around where people suddenly want to be police officers, then we will get a better, police force if there's more to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's less to choose from, and do you guys get a lot of like ex-military and stuff like that? See, I would assume there's a lot of that, a lot of Afghanistan, and see. Do you guys have to go through PTSD training or like any assessments at all?
We have EAP, which is it's like employee action something or other, but it's like we have therapists that we can call if we need it.
But you're not trained before, or you're not tested or looked at beforehand. See, that's an issue. That should be happening. You guys should be looked at beforehand to see if you're having PTSD.
We do. There is a psychological test that we have to go through.
Oh, there is.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That's part of the structured interview. The structured interview is like a 3-part, drug test, backgrounds interview, psychological test, polygraph, and I think that's it. I mean, as I said, it's been almost 20 years since I've been through, and they just keep getting more efficient and better at the things that I went through when I was in. So.
Right. Well, cool, Kevin. Look, man, I appreciate you answering questions about this stuff. I know it is a very uncomfortable time right now, and it's got to be hard to do something when your heart's in the right place and you're watching the institution itself start to have cracks around, because of these horrible people who have done shitty things, when that's not akin with your beliefs or aligned with your beliefs. You know what I mean?
As I said, I've seen the worst of people and the best of people, and we just lost 2 officers in Texas yesterday, got ambushed and got killed. So I think that brought us up to 26 law enforcement officers that's already died this year in the line of duty. So
wow, quite a few.
Huh?
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to go face that every day. You know what I mean? So, look, man, obviously change has to come, but I really think that the way to change is to work with people, not against people. And I really hope that happens.
I've always said, come to a common ground.
The common ground should be, I want my home to be peaceful. I want to be safe.
The answer is in the middle. This country's been around for 200 years. I mean, we've been through worse shit.
Right.
And we'll get over it. We'll overcome. It's just going to take some time, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
I also agree.
You know what I mean? So, well, thank you for your time, dude. And, down the road, I'd love to talk to you again sometime and see where this goes and how it progresses. And I appreciate you being just brave enough to just talk about what you do and what's going on. I don't think people, like I said, I don't think they hear from your side. And I think they need to, so we can have an understanding of what you go through. So thanks so much. And everybody listening, like I said, guys, I don't do a lot of guests, but I felt like this was a really important time to have a guest. And, Kevin's been nothing but cool and very open. And he's answered every question I've asked him, whether it was uncomfortable or not. And it has to be at times, when someone's throwing things at you like, well, why this? Well, why this? When he's not the guy that put a knee on someone's neck. You know what I mean? And so I really do appreciate him taking the time to answer these questions. And if you guys have any further questions for Kevin, leave them in the comments, man. I would love for him to see them and, maybe get some correspondence going back and forth, because we got to understand, man. We got to each understand each other's position in this to make it all work. So thank you guys for listening to the In a Crowded Room podcast. I will be back very soon with another episode. Much love, my friends, and all the best.